Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Carlton People. We are churning through these, and with the off-season, I'm sure there'll be more to come. But today, I've got a gentleman who we've tried to get on for a while, but he and I just keep going back and forth. I speak of Mr. Mark Elvey. Hello, sir.
G'day, Terry. How are you, mate?
Mate, I'm good. It's fantastic that we finally got here and we got it done.
Yeah, finally. So, been a couple of weeks toing and froing, but it's great to catch up for a chat, and thanks for having me.
No, mate, you're welcome. And, to be honest, it's probably worked out perfectly because now we've got a full season under the belt. And so anything we talk about can be spoken about as a whole about the club and where we're at. So I think it worked out pretty well for us.
Yeah, it definitely has. So, it's been an interesting season to say the least. What has it been? 8 games under a kick pretty much. So, yeah, it's been stressful times. Lots of positives, lots of stuff that we need to get right. But, certainly plenty to talk about.
Yeah. Well, let's begin, mate. Let's start. Well, obviously, this is all about you. Let's start with you, the mad Carlton man that you are today. Where did it begin and how did it begin?
Yeah, so my first memories was when I was 7 years old, the 1987 grand final. Watched the Blues win that, and from that moment on, I was a really passionate Carlton supporter. So from that moment on, I followed the Blues, and I used to be down the block on a Saturday with my old man and listen to the radio and Stephen Kernahan and Bradley and Mill Hanna, Tommy Elvin, so all those. So I just fell in love with the Blues, and then I was fortunate enough in 1995 at the age of 15, travelled down from Mildura and went to the grand final and watched us beat the Cats. So that was quite awesome. But then obviously a couple of years later I got drafted to the Western Bulldogs, so fell out of love with Carlton for a while naturally. Had 8 years in Melbourne, and then when I moved back to Mildura in 2006, and it sort of coincided with Juddy coming to the Blues, I think about 2007. And then just fell back in love with the Blues, and I've had that passion ever since.
It's interesting because I don't think we've had any former players, to my knowledge. We've had guys who have been through the TAC Cup system, but we haven't had anybody who's been, on the inside, and especially for as long as you did. You mentioned how you fell in love, and then you sort of fell out of love naturally because you're playing for a different club. What brought you back to the Blues? Was it just the childhood memories?
Yeah, I think so. And I think once I obviously loved Juddy at West Coast. I was fortunate enough to play a couple of games against him, and just when he came on the scene, and then for him to announce that he wanted to come to Carlton, that was just awesome. So, that sort of got me back in love with the Blues, and from that moment on, I've loved the Blues. And I mean, even though I did have one night at the Western Bulldogs, I got to play Craig Bradley for half. And he was an idol growing up, so I'll never forget that. I spent the night running around, like just looking at him and staring at him. It was pretty surreal. It's one of my greatest memories I've ever had. So I was very fortunate, but certainly fell back in love with the Blues around about 2007.
Yeah. You mentioned growing up. You mentioned obviously, for the most part, all of us become supporters. For the most part, it's family and the environment you're in. I guess for you growing up, the right time for you as well, being a young kid and seeing success and all of that. And it just seems like such a distant memory. And I didn't even live through that era, that I can actually remember. What was it like having the swagger?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. We're playing finals all the time, and the Carlton Footy Club, when I was up and about, they do have a fair bit of arrogance. So that was pretty cool. We didn't know anything else other than playing finals there for a large period of time. And I mean, 95 to only lose 2 games, that was as good as it gets. So then obviously the prelim in 99, knocking off the Bombers, and unfortunately since then it's been pretty slim pickings, other than the little period there on the Rats where we're probably a bit stiff not to play in the prelim, I think in 11. So I certainly feel now the frustration of the Carlton supporters, because we just haven't had that success for such a long period of time. And I guess in the last 5 to 6 weeks, I've really seen that frustration and probably a fair bit of negativity come out in our supporter base, because we're just been so starved and everyone's so desperate to have that success. Whereas personally, I'm a little bit the other way. I'm pretty bullish, and I'm pretty excited about where I think we can go from next year onwards.
Yeah, I think when you strip it all back, not taking away because it's happened. I mean, I think we've won one of our last 5, one of our last 6 to end the year. But when you do look at it, when you take that step back, and I guess once the season ends, that's when you can actually take a bit of a breath, because you don't have, the next game to think about and worry about. There has been some improvement. And I guess we'll get to that in a moment. But I want to ask you a little bit about the salary cap era, because a lot of people talk about how we could still be feeling it today culturally, and because we were so far behind the rest of the league in the way we rebuilt the club. And obviously, with you've lived right in that era, especially being on the inside. What does that sentiment mean to you, and does it make any sense to you how much that punishment still hurts?
Yeah, big time. And I think everybody probably underestimated for a fair period of time just how much that set the club back and how long it was going to take to work your way back from that. So, especially when you lose draft picks like we did, you're talking about generation players with those high picks. And I think it was, it would have been Wells and Goddard. So, you bring those two in and you build around that with what we already had. There probably would have been some success in amongst that. So, most people, once they got their head around it, looked at it and thought, well, it's definitely set us back a decade. But the reality is it's probably set us back further than that. So that's why hopefully now it's important to remain positive and, there's some good times ahead.
Yeah, no doubt. If you look at, I like to look at this rebuild as the second one, and I look at the sort of 05, 06, 07 period as sort of the beginning of the first proper rebuild going to the draft. And I remember, I think it might have been 2013 when we played in the final, and then we go into 2014. And looking around, I was just, where's the future here? Whereas now you can't question the future in terms of how we're set up moving forward. And I don't think there's any doubt about that. And as you said, you're pretty bullish about where we're going. How do you sort of manage your expectations now and sort of looking ahead to the future? And is there a point for you where it gets to, okay, we need to sort of start demanding a bit now? How do you take on that?
Yeah, I guess if I go back to when Sauce came on board 2015, I think what people don't realise is that from 2008 to 2014 in the draft, we've only got one player left on our list from that period, actual draft pick, and that's Patrick Cripps. So I understand that people are frustrated that the rebuild is taking a period of time, but he's done what he said. We'd go to 5 drafts. We've done that. We're 5 to 6 years into that rebuild. We've got a bit of a gap on our list between 26 to 30, which is still a little bit concerning. That's why this trade free agency period is really important to bring in a couple of established A-graders. But I've always been of the belief that the period of 2021 to 2023 was the period that will really judge the rebuild. So my expectations this year, I didn't think we'd play finals, even though we're in the mix late in the season. But certainly from next year onwards, it's time to start. Our expectation should be that we're playing finals and we start to really reap the benefits of that hard, long road that we started with Sauce back in 2015. So that's probably where I see it right at the moment.
Yeah. When is there, I'm asking about the penny drop moment for players in general. And as I'm saying it, I'm thinking, well, Sam Morris doesn't apply because he's a bit of a freak.
Yeah, he's different.
He's ridiculous. He bucks the trend. But generally speaking, in your experience, when is that sort of that point in your career where you're so comfortable after a couple of pre-seasons that you're now a bona fide player, everything just becomes a bit more natural? When does that happen? And I guess it's relative to the draft picks we have, because now I think we're starting to see, the Wiederings and maybe to an extent the Harry Mackays start to get it. When does it generally happen?
You need a group of players. You need a core group of players to come through and play, 4, 5, 6 seasons together and get that 60 to 80 to 90 games together. Once they've got that period of cohesion of playing together, then you should start to see some real improvement, a real spike in improvement. And you've only got to look at Wiedering this year. So, he started really well, probably went down a little bit and people were wondering whether he was going to be the player that we want him to be. And then have a look at him in year 4, year 5. Like he's been outstanding. So that's why we've got to have a little bit of patience. And that's why, even though Dow and O'Brien haven't played much this year, it's only their 3rd season. So by seasons 4 and 5, you would hope that they're really starting to establish themselves, and then we're starting to see the benefits of those drafts. So I do get people are impatient. I get that, and we want them to be stars like Walsh straight away. But sometimes it just takes players. Look at Petrarca, for example. He was going to be a star from very early on. Now at 24 years of age, he's just played his best season. So, sure, some guys you want them to be there at 2021. Petrarca's got there at 24. So you do have to be patient, but I love the way Harry Mackay finished the year. I love Jacob Wiedering's year. So that they're two good examples of spending 4 or 5 years in the system. But, going forward from next year onwards as a footy club, our expectation should be to be playing finals from next year.
Yeah, definitely. There's a bit of sentiment this year about, I think maybe more so towards the end of the year, it was sort of more about play the kids, get them in, get experience into them. Whereas I think maybe even as early as start of 2019 and going back to 2018 when I think they were all playing, I look at it, I really like the fact that we went and got a Jack Noons, a Pitternet, Eddie Betts to an extent, Jack Martin, because I think I enjoyed the fact that some of these kids were maybe a little stiff not to play this year at times, but I think it was good for them. Do you share that, or do you think it's a different way to develop?
I do. I just think we probably got the last couple of years wrong a little bit. I thought that we're throwing to the walls a little bit too much. Like, there's nothing wrong with spending a 6-week period in the VFL, working on your game, dominating at VFL level, then you come back into the side in good form, ready to go. I felt like we were just handing out games the last couple of years when they probably weren't deserving them. And then that was reflective of their form and development not quite being where we would have liked. So, unfortunately, I think we got that wrong a little bit the last couple of years. Now Teague's making it pretty hard for them to, you've got to earn your stripes. You've got to work hard on your game and bang the door down. So I don't mind that at all. And there's nothing wrong with developing down at the lower level. You look at the Swans, you look at the Cats, clubs like that, they develop their players, and then, when they come in at 21, 22, 23, they're ready to go. So that's sort of where I see some of our young guys at the moment. So I'm not too worried that O'Brien and Dow didn't play a lot this year.
Yeah, same here. I think it's good for even guys like Kennedy, who might have been a bit stiff before he got in. I think even Zach Fisher spent a few weeks in the twos before he finally got his chance. You saw, for the most part with them, there was that hunger and that desperation of, okay, well, I've got to keep my spot. I need to play well.
And I think we saw that with Fisher when he came back into the side. He was so switched on. He looked really hungry. He was really sharp. His forward craft was fantastic. I would like to see him get up the ground a bit more because I think he could be a great inside-outside player, up around the footy too. I think he would give us a lot around the ball. So, but you're right. When they've come in, they've looked hungry and they want to perform to keep their spot, and that's what we want.
Yeah. So, what's next? What is it? What's the next piece, or what's the next priority for you to take the next step? Is it just time?
Yeah, probably time. But I think our list is at the stage where we've been to enough drafts. Like I can't see us going to the draft this year with our first round pick. So we'll definitely use that to try and get a genuine A grader in. I think we need to bring in two quality A graders, and it looks like today that Zach Williams has chosen Carlton. So that's perfect. He's got leg speed. He kicks the ball really well. So between the arcs at the moment, that's probably the one thing that's lacking. We've got a lot of workmen like inside mids at the moment. With Ed Curnow, Setterfield, Cripps, Kennedy, they don't have leg speed or spread. And that's another part why Cunningham needs to either play up on a wing or through the middle a little bit more. But Williams, I think back to his prelim final last year when Toby Green, Whitfield, they had a few injuries. Williams went and played on ball in that prelim. His footy smarts, his ability to get clearances, use the ball on the outside, he would be a great addition for us, either at half back or on ball. So that's a big tick straight away. And then if we can just bring in another A grader, and then the two keys are we've got to get Marchbank and Charlie Curnow fit and healthy. So there's a couple of recruits straight away. So all of a sudden, if you can bring in a couple of A graders, you get Marchie and Charlie up and about, the development of our young guys, another pre-season, all of a sudden things can come together pretty quickly. So that's why I'm quite bullish about where we're going.
Yeah. I read a stat today, or I heard it, I should say, on SEN. They were talking about we had won 39 quarters this year, which would put us for third in the competition for most quarters won. So I think you're right. If we can just clean up, it's very well documented. We usually have a 15 or 16 minute period where we allow so much damage to come, and I think if we can just tighten that up.
Yeah, we've got to fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about? I'm wondering about culture. What makes good culture, and how do you create good culture?
Yeah, it's just at the end of the day, it's just through sheer hard work. And having everybody buy in. Culture is. Are our leaders prepared to spend time growing relationships, building trust, building mateship, investing in the young guys that come through the club? If you do that and you spend some time with them, then you can fast track their development, because the quicker you can get them believing that they belong at the level, then the quicker the footy side can develop and start to win games of footy. So we're just coming from so far back with a losing culture for such a long period of time that I think we get in games still at the moment. We're unsure how to win. I like the fact that we've won some of those close games this year. That's a really good sign. But yeah, as far as culture goes, yeah, we've got to create that winning culture because we still don't have it. So that's a big step we've got to take forward as a footy club, definitely.
It feels like, looking from the outside, it feels like the old chicken and the egg situation because I can't help but feel, and this is just a hunch, this is based off just what I feel. I feel like because we've been in a losing situation for just such a long time, it maybe seeps in. Is there any merit to that at all?
Yeah, no, there is. Yeah, definitely, because we've just had a losing culture for such a long period of time that you can just get a little bit comfortable with that at times. It feels like the norm. So those 4 or 5 goal run-ons that sides are getting, it just feels like the norm because that's all that the footy club's known for a long period of time. So we've got to buck the trend a little bit there and fix that. So, and that's just growth as far as playing games together, dealing with those situations and anxiety in games a lot better, stepping up, and we need our leaders to step up and take ownership of games. So we've got to correct that. But I don't mind that we've had that, to be honest, because, okay, we understand what that looks like now. How are we going to fix it? And it's been hard for the group since about round 2 or 3. They haven't been able to train as a team to fix these things either. So, I mean, and that's evident with our connection from our mids to our forwards. You look at round 2 against Geelong, the way we set that game up that night was superb. We isolated their defenders one-on-one. It was one of the best coach games I've seen from our footy department in a long time. But since then, that's slowly fallen away. We haven't been able to train together as a group. And, we've had games where we've had so many inside 50s. You look at the third quarter against the Giants, season on the line, 17 repeat inside 50s for 1 goal. So we just lost that connection, forwards jumping to each other, not lowering our eyes and hitting targets. So we've got to keep that in mind as well. It's been a strange season, shortened games, not been able to train properly. So, it's like I said, it's good that we've had those periods of games because we need to fix them and get them out of our game. Simple as that.
Yeah. Are you keen to go back to normal next year, normal length quarters and back to, I guess, the good old days?
Yeah, it would be fantastic, and you can imagine the crowds next year if everyone can be allowed back in. So I mean that would be fantastic. Well, I do have a feeling that the AFL won't go back to full length quarters, so 20 minutes. I reckon they'll meet halfway. So I've got a feeling that there'll be 18-minute quarters, which, well, it's better than the 16. But I would have liked it to have gone back to normal. But I just think for the players to be able to get back, train as a whole group, we need to continue to develop and evolve the way we play, especially if we want to play that front half game. Teams go coast to coast if they get out the back too much, so we've got to fix that. But over summer, if they can all train as a group, then that's going to be really important.
Yeah. I mean, look, that's probably another good thing about this year as well. I think maybe in years gone by, I've watched us play and not really know what we're doing from week to week. It's kind of been, it's just whether it's disorganised or whatever the case may be. Well, there were a lot of the time this year for me. I was like, well, I know exactly what we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
What do you think about the game plan? Like, how is it comparing to the rest of the league?
Yeah, I like what he's trying to do. I thought the footy we played early in the year when we were fresher was a really attractive brand of footy. We moved the ball really well because we haven't been able to score the last 4 or 5 years. So, there's always going to be a bit of an imbalance at times when you go from not being able to score at all to want to take the game on and attack. Sometimes you can get opened up. So I didn't mind that because I didn't really see us contending for a premiership this year. So you've got to try these things, get the team to buy into a certain game style. So that was really evident early in the year. We moved the ball really well. Our ability to score was really positive. Yes, we got opened up out the back, and that's something we've got to fix up. But there's definitely, there's a brand. So there's a system. When I watch Carlton at the moment, week to week, you can tell that there's a brand, a system. But we've just unfortunately lost that connection from our mids to our forwards, and that's really let us down because then teams have slingshot off half back and really opened us up out the back. So I think our back line, considering, has held up really, really well.
Yeah. What do you think of constant 4 and 5 day breaks? What's that like on the body and being able to back it up?
Yeah, I think for those players, I mean, I only look at us and you sound like you're making excuses, but I mean, we're the only club that did a hard 28-day lockdown quarantine. So we're the only club that had to do that. We've changed motels 9 to 10 times. And then we've copped the compressed fixture right at the end of the season. So last 4 to 5 weeks, I was probably a little bit critical that we didn't rotate one or two more players each week. Like, I just felt Cripps had to have a week off there somewhere. He was that banged up. He just needed to have a week. Doherty needed to have a week. But then again, we just didn't have a lot of depth of players to come in with a few injuries, and Stocker being back in Victoria, so we didn't have a lot there. But it just showed in the end. We just really struggled to lift our legs the last 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah. Who are some of the kids that maybe don't get spoken about in the same limelight that the Walshes and the Wiederings do? Who are some of the kids coming up that you've maybe taken a really keen eye on that you think are going to start to emerge over the next few years?
Yeah, I think, we really need, out of those drafts. So really, and there's a lot of spotlight on Dow and O'Brien. So they'll be year 4 next year. So obviously, we want to see them really developing their football and playing more next year. I like the look of young Philp in his first season this year. I think he showed a bit. Really keen to see Kemp. He's got huge raps. Obviously, been a bit disappointing that Stockers had to be back in Victoria for the whole year. So, I mean, they're the ones that we really need to come on. The biggest positive for me nearly out of the season has been TDK. So I just loved what he did. Even in that West Coast game, he was jumping over Nick Nat, who will be the All-Australian ruckman. His ability to compete. I love his ruck craft, just the way he's able to hit the ball 360. So, I mean, he should be our number one ruck going forward next year. If he can have a really good pre-season, put on a little bit of strength, then he'll get some confidence around the ground to start taking his marks. So he's probably, out of all our young ones coming through, he was the one that I've really been able to look at and think, geez, we've plucked one here. This is fantastic. So I'm really excited about what TDK can do in the future.
Yeah, I made a comment earlier in the week about I wish we could inject 18 months into TDK without actually needing to live through the 18 months.
Yeah.
I think he's coming along nicely. I think it's more of a relief than anything. Like, I think we all had faith that he would come good, but to actually see it, okay, he's getting a game, he's holding his own, he's even had some really, really good moments. I think his fourth quarter in that's
the Sydney game. His last 15 minutes was, that game was on the line, and it tells you a bit about someone that when the game's on the line, he wanted the footy. So whether the ball was on the ground or he took that big pack mark, that's what I like. So he's got a bit of a winner's attitude that he wanted the footy in the big moments. So that's what you want. That's what we want a club of. We want players who want to own the big moments, who want to step up, not wait for others to do it. And he, for a young guy, he really went after that game late, and I love that. So that was a really great sign.
Yeah, no, absolutely. With the club moving forward, what other changes do you think are needed? I mean, is it a player thing? Is it an off-field thing? Do you think there are other changes needed? Or do you think change is something that we maybe need to stop doing?
It's a really good question. I think definitely, like I touched on before, it's a big free agency trade period for us. We definitely need to bring in a couple of established A-graders. So that's really, really important. So the recruiting team have got a big job to do there. But a big one for mine is, and it's nothing against John Barker, but he's been at the club about 10 years. So I look at our assistants. Teague's done 28 games. I like a lot of what he's doing, but he's obviously got some areas he needs to improve in as well. Let's get a great support team around him. So I want us to be proactive in that space. So bring in a couple of really established assistants to bulk that area up, support Teague. We've had guys there. I think Dale Amos has been there 5-6 years as well, and nothing against those guys, but they've been there a long time. So I'd really like us to be proactive in that space, and I'm really interested to see what we do. I think if we go in with the same coaching structure again, I'll be a bit disappointed. So, yeah, I think once we've done that, if we can bring a couple in, then we look to do, to settle the club down on and off the field going forward.
Yeah. No, love it. I've really enjoyed this. You've just given me a new, fresh insight, and you've allowed me to just look at things in a different way, and I guess calm down a bit. What's the game? Like I said, well, game week, and I think because we've had the condensed schedule, it's kind of like there's that build up for each game, and then there's the anxiety, then there's the disappointment and frustration, then you've got to really move on. But I'm enjoying the fact that we're going to have it, a while now to just settle down, and then before we know it, we'll be itching for game day again. Oh,
mate, the stress from those close games, though, like. Oh, my wife would leave the house. I was going crazy. Close finishes, mate. 8 of our 16, 17 games were under a kick. Like, it was stressful times. So, but then, like you said, the compressed fixture, 4 or 5 days later, we're playing again. So, but you know what? At least we're in those games. It's been a long time, and it's a bit of a cop out perhaps at times to say, we're in every game. But I think when you take the emotion out of it and you just settle down, have a look at it in isolation, like you said, the 39 quarters we've won, there are a lot of positives in that, but we've got a lot to fix as well.
Yeah, for sure. One more question before I let you go. I ask everyone this question, and now this is a little piece of history for the channel. We'll look back on it decades later. When are we lifting up premiership number 17?
I'd like to think in the next 3 years. So that period of the 2021 to 2023, I'd love for us in that 3-year window to be lifting premiership number 17, mate. That'd be absolutely sensational. Obviously, keeping in mind that 18-team comp, this is a brutal competition. So I think first and foremost, we need to get ourselves back into a final series. But if you're a blue bagger, we've got some pretty exciting times coming up.
Yeah. Do you subscribe to the theory that you got to go through the heartache of losing a final, maybe making a prelim, losing it, and allowing that to drive you to the granny, or do you think any given year anything can happen?
Any given year, I think once you get there and you're in the mix, you don't want to be having a close loss or a big finals loss and thinking, oh, that'll hold us in good stead. When you get an opportunity, take it. Simple as that, because you don't know what's going to happen the following year. You look at Charlie Curnow's hardly played any footy. You don't know what injuries are going to pop up. Positive this year for us was Willow and Doc getting through the season pretty much after not playing any footy for 2 years. So that's a huge positive. So I think once you get there, and if you've built belief, you've got a really strong, sound game plan. You've had continuity of a group playing together for a period of time. Just go and win it. Simple as that. You've got to take your opportunities. So you only got to look at the Pies. They've been thereabouts the last 3 to 4 years and fell short by a couple of points. So there's just no guarantees.
Yeah, I think as Bucky says, own the now.
Own the now.
You've got to own the moment. So
absolutely, you do.
Yeah, mate. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, mate.
With you, getting a fresh perspective.
Yep. No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Go Blues, eh?
Go Baggers.